The summer we first moved into the old house by the river, the air itself seemed to breathe in slow, patient lengths, as if the walls were listening for a footfall they knew would come someday and hoped would be careful. I was 7, and the world fit around me like a bonnet, soft, precarious, and just a touch too loose in places where the wind found a seam to slip through. The house wore its memory in its shingles and in the tremor of the front stairs when a cat walked by or a door forgot to fully close. It was not a place you startled. It was a place you learned to listen to, as you would listen to a grandmother's sigh when the night pressed too hard against the windows. The river ran behind the house, a silver ribbon that braided with the rain and then unbraided again, leaving little pools where the sun would parade itself for a moment before retreating to the trees. In that first summer, I was given a simple task: keep the porch light lit after dusk and keep away from the attic. My mother said the attic was the house's lungs, and lungs should not be forced to work if they could rest. I believed her, though I also believed the attic was a door with a hinge so long and so quiet that it forgot to squeak when it opened. We were a family who spoke in the language of chores and soft rituals, a language whose grammar was the quiet insistence of routine. Our neighbour's girl, Mara, who was 2 years older than me, lived in the house across the yard with the peeling paint and the broken swing that still kept its promise to creak whenever a gust arrived. Mara had a way of listening that seemed almost a crime to describe, a listening that did not interrupt the world to fit itself into a sentence. She told me a story once, that the house was a library, and every year a new memory rented a corner and forgot to depart. I did not know what she meant, but I believed in it anyway, because Mara's certainty made the air in the afternoon feel cooler. The house's memory gathered in places that were ordinary then, and would become extraordinary only when you left them for a long time and came back. In the kitchen, a tin box rested on a high shelf above the sink. Nothing special to look at, but a thing that seemed to tilt its own neck with pride whenever I looked away. Inside it lay a lock of Mara's hair from the one time we braided it into a rough crown, a moth-edged button from her coat, and a folded piece of notebook paper that Mara herself had scrawled on with the bravado of a child who would not admit she believed in ghosts. Not really. On the outside, someone had drawn a small horse in chalk, a toy she had once kept next. There was a rusty nail in the box's lid that I always imagined Mara's small finger had pressed, twice, the way you press a stubborn latch when you are sure it should be open. Mara disappeared one storming afternoon, while I was chasing a shadow across the lawn, thinking it was a cat, or perhaps a trick of the sun. The river roared, the trees bent and whispered, the sky turned the colour of old pennies, and Mara's voice, soft and certain, vanished from the world, as if she had slid into a scene where the light forgot to shine. The family said she had run away to live with cousins, that she had grown tired of the town's small arithmetic of weather and worry. I believed them, because that is what you do when you're a child, and the grown-ups drink tea that tastes of rain, and say things with a calming certainty that doesn't require proof. I did not leave Mara's memory in the attic, though I did not tell myself as much. The attic, with its narrow ladder and the light that penetrated through a cracked skylight, became the confessor of all the unspoken questions I carried like pebbles in my pockets. The house's breath there smelled of old newspapers and piano lacquer and a fruit I could not name. The memory box's lid became a small shrine I would touch when the world grew too bustling with noise and fear, and the grown-up versions of myself began to look suspiciously like strangers who wore too much perfume and never talked about the sea. Years passed, and the house did not forget Mara any more than it forgot the rain. It kept Mara's box in place, as if the moment Mara set the box down had become a permanent turning of the day. My mother died while the river remained, stubbornly patient, and my father followed a year later, in a way that left the house's walls with a new, slower rhythm. The rhythm of a life that had begun to understand that time was a kind of grace that could be used or squandered, but never undone. Well, at last, I returned to the house as an old woman. The porch light was still lit in the place where the porch met the street, and the air carried that same lilac rain scent that had first welcomed me. The river wore the day. The stairs did not groan at every step, but they did answer with a whisper when I climbed. The living room's wallpaper, the pale yellowing kind that makes you feel both older and younger at the same time, seemed to lean in to listen whenever I spoke to Mara's box, as if the two of us shared a secret we hadn't yet learned how to tell. The floorboards were no longer the same boards of my childhood. They had learned the language of my footsteps and had grown a language of their own that only old doors and old dreams could speak. I found Mara's box exactly as I had left it, and exactly where I had left it, except that the lid did not rest easily in its hinge anymore. It shifted when you touched it, as if the box did not wish to be opened at all, but would endure it for the sake of something it remembered, with a tremor you could feel in your bones. The note Mara had written to me, "Remember me when you need a door that opens to laughter," had grown faint, as if a century had pressed a palm to its page and declared, "Not today." But beneath those fragile lines lay the old, stubborn insistence that the past would always be present if you would let it be. The attic remained the house's most intimate room, a chamber where light came in sideways through the glass and painted the dust in golden motes. It was there that Mara's voice first spoke without apology, not a scream or a fear, but a calm and intimate confession that sounded like the turning of a page in a book you had already read 100 times. It did not shout, it did not threaten. It spoke with the grave. "I did not leave," Mara said, and her words seemed to carry the scent of the thing you do not speak aloud because you do not want to admit what it means. I did not answer at first. I stood there, the box in my hands, but childhood trinkets glimmering with a memory that refused to dim. The attic's air grew cooler, and the shadows stretched as though a long, careful hand was smoothing them into form. The house did not move. It did not retreat. It simply offered me time to listen to the sound of the river through the boarded attic window, to hear Mara's voice, soft, clear, as if she stood beside me and not inside the memory box at all.